Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News, coming to you from our digital desk. We're about to take you out to a live event with not only Mayor Justin Bibb, but the cabinet level position, Henry Cisneros. He is the former U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. They're going to be discussing what Mayor Bibb's office calls Cleveland's bold housing agenda. What they say is pioneering local solutions to national housing issues, from sheltering the unhoused and the affordability to equitable development. So this is going to be a conversation between Bibb and the former U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development on really what can be done to move forward in this country with the housing crisis. Let's take you live now to the event being held at the Cleveland Foundation on Euclid Avenue.
We are co-chaired by Cleveland's own Mayor Justin Bibb. We're thrilled to be here today. Thank you for hosting us. The other co-chairs of our task force include Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens, the Governor of Utah, Governor Cox, as well as our private sector leadership, Susan Thomas from the Fifth Third Bank Community Development Corporation. We're able to do this because of the support of leaders across the country, and we are grateful to leaders in Cleveland for support of this task force, including the Rocket Community Fund, the Cleveland Foundation, and the Gun Foundation. So thank you for that support. In the time that we've been together, we have produced a federal policy agenda, and we are producing, as we speak, a state and local housing action plan. It is coming out in several tranches. The first tranche was released back in March. Next tranches will come out here in May and June, providing our state and local leaders new tools, innovations that have been proven out by other state and local leaders across the country, so we can scale and replicate to meet the demands of this crisis.
I think so.
We are about to enjoy a conversation between Mayor Bibb and a member of our task force, the former mayor of San Antonio, which will always be his best title, and the former Secretary of HUD, Henry Cisneros. Both of these gentlemen hardly need an introduction, but I do want to add a personal point of privilege in congratulating Secretary Cisneros on the recent award from Japan in the Order of the Rising Sun. Just another testament to your leadership, and looking forward to the conversation the two of you will have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for organizing this meeting, but thank you mostly for the work you're doing across the country with the Accelerator. Great idea of bringing mayors together to work on pressing themes, great success with infrastructure, and now this all-out effort with respect to housing. Thanks to Bruce, thanks to Ben, the rest of the team with the task force who've organized such an impressive effort. I said earlier, I think what I have seen, Mayor, to date in this effort is about the best, most concrete, grounded, focused effort in housing of any task force that I've seen at work in the last couple of decades. It's a treat also to be able to thank the Cleveland Foundation for hosting us. When I was mayor of San Antonio and the area foundation movement was just starting up, people cited the first of those foundation efforts, and it was here in Cleveland. The Cleveland Foundation was the grandfather of all the area foundations which have done so much work, thanks to, for example, Atlanta, which hosted our last conference, the area foundation there. And from a personal standpoint, I've always thought of Cleveland as the birthplace of my interest in urban affairs, because it was when Carl Stokes got elected mayor of Cleveland, the first African-American mayor of a major American city. And there had been other African-American mayors, such as Richard Hatcher in Gary, but the whole country took notice when Mayor Stokes became mayor of Cleveland, and he was an inspiring figure who generated a whole group of people who found their way to public service as a result of watching his work. I later had the privilege with Bruce of working with his brother Lewis Stokes, who was in the Congress and chaired some of the key committees in the housing field. But thank you for your efforts and the attention that you're drawing to Cleveland. And I'd like to begin by just asking, give us a précis of the economic evolution of Cleveland and the way it has impacted housing circumstances in Cleveland. over the years?
Yeah, well, first off, I want to thank everyone for coming to the great city of Cleveland, Ohio for this convening. Sorry my Cavs didn't get the W last night. We're going to tie it up tomorrow. But really excited for the next 2 days, and really excited for the work that this task force has been leading over the last year. You know, what really inspires me about this work is you have Democrats and Republicans all focused on facing the most important issue, I think, in America right now is our national housing crisis. And you know, Mayor, because once a mayor, always a mayor, to your question, you know, Cleveland has been ground zero for a lot of the challenges that we've seen in housing right now across the country. We are a legacy American city. At one time, we were the 5th largest city in the United States. At the height of America's first industrial revolution, Cleveland was once considered America's Silicon Valley, because John D. Rockefeller got his start here in Cleveland with the creation of Standard Oil, which fueled America's first industrial renaissance.
In the 1950s, there were more Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Cleveland
than anywhere in the country,
any other city in America, including New York.
Absolutely. And so that's a source of pride for our city. But unfortunately, we weren't able to really tackle some of the international and national headwinds to make us competitive as we needed to be. From globalization to the hollowing out of the middle class and the urban core to white flight and redlining. And so fast forward, we have 2008 happen when we are the ground zero for the predatory mortgage crisis. And then over the last 2 decades, throughout that same time frame, we've lost nearly 20% of our population and 30% of all traded sector jobs. And so coming out of the pandemic, we as an administration saw a major opportunity to address some of these headwinds. One of the things that I'm really excited about is the fact that, you know, the biggest challenge that we've had in our city has been stabilizing our housing stock and making sure that housing stock is of high quality and dignity for all of our residents. But because folks are looking at housing as a new competitive asset class, right now on the east side of Cleveland, as an example, a large share of all the homes on the east side of Cleveland are owned by LLC investors. Many don't live in Ohio. Many don't live in the country. A large share are foreign LLC investors. And so the work we've done with our administration and city council, we passed historic legislation called Residents First. Gives us more tools like a local agent in charge to hold predatory out-of-state landlords accountable. Being able to levy civil tickets on a home now so that folks can't just pass the buck. We can now hold you accountable in a civil and criminal court of law. All those things will go a long way to really addressing our ability to stabilize the housing stock, but we're also making some big, bold investments to attract and develop new housing and new housing investment as well, too.
Mayor, let's talk just a little bit more about the connection between the sort of economic trajectory for Cleveland and other progress, tourism, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, et cetera, and housing. Over the last several decades, Cleveland has been noted for strategies like your focus on the biosciences, in particular nanotechnologies and medical devices and such, between the Cleveland Clinic's strength, Case Western Reserve, and other sort of new wave economic development. What's the general economic trajectory as you see it now? Is it going to create population, jobs, and housing, or are you more steady state? How would you characterize it?
I believe we are now in a position where we are going to see more investment and a increase in population growth because of the strong foundation we've been building to create a new, stronger economic baseline in our city and our region. I'll give you a couple of examples on why. You know, in my opening comments, I talked about how we saw a hollowing out of our population and a hollowing out of industry in the urban core in Cleveland. that created a lot of vacant land in our city. One of the first things we did as an administration, we were lucky to receive $512 million in American Rescue Plan funds from the Biden-Harris administration. We took $50 million of that investment, our largest allocation, to create a new fund called the Sites Fund for Good Jobs. And this new Site Readiness Fund for Good Jobs, we are in the process of raising another $50 million, so it'll be a $100 million fund. And we are converting 1,000 acres of dilapidated brownfield vacant land, primarily located in the east side of the city of Cleveland.
Is this in one large parcel or
No,
all over the place?
all over the entire city. And we're going to convert that 1,000 acres of land into shovel-ready job sites to attract and retain good jobs in the future. These aren't minimum wage jobs. These are good-paying jobs that create a family-sustaining wage over time. Just several weeks ago, we broke ground on a 30-plus acre site in the Collinwood neighborhood, the old National Acme factory, which helped create weapons in World War II. And now companies are looking at that site to say, hey, maybe we can come to Cleveland or expand in Cleveland, because if you're a business right now, you need two things: land and talent. Land and talent. So we're solving that equation. The second thing I would say that is going to address this is not only do we take care of the sickest people in the world in Cleveland with the Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, Metro Health Hospital, we're home to the only quantum computer dedicated to healthcare at the Cleveland Clinic. But there are 4 key sectors we're focused on right now to really promote this Cleveland era for growth and innovation. First being aerospace and defense. We're home to NASA. We're getting ready to pursue a $2 billion makeover of our airport. And we have a strong heritage in aerospace across Northeast Ohio. The second sector is advanced manufacturing. Again, our legacy competitive advantage as a city. And making sure that when we look at advanced manufacturing, how we're using AI, machine learning, to make sure we have the best manufacturing sector in the country. The third sector, food. Food. One of my favorite things to buy is kraut from Cleveland Kitchen. They have some really good kimchi, by the way, if you love Korean food. They are one of the #1 producers of kraut in the world, in Whole Foods, Heinz, nationwide. And the last sector is technology. We have a strong technology sector in Cleveland as well. So we're going to have the sites and the land ready. We have our 4 key sectors we're focused on. And the housing piece will be that linchpin. So when we attract families, we have communities of choice they can live, work, and play in as well, too.
So housing is an integral part of that larger strategy.
It's essential.
And you mentioned some of the elements of your housing push. How would you characterize the overarching nature of your views about housing?
Well, one of the things I think my team and I have recognized very quickly in our first few years since taking office has been the importance of public-private partnerships in this space. City Hall can't do it alone. That's why I'm happy we have a robust network of private sector partners in this National Housing Task Force. I wish I had 10x more incentives and tools at City Hall to create more housing in our community. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so we've been thinking very boldly about pursuing those critical public-private partnerships. Case in point, the work we're doing with KeyBank and LISC. We just launched this year a $100 million housing investment fund with KeyBank and LISC. The goal with that fund is over the next 5 years is to create 3,000 more units of affordable and workforce housing across the city, with 100 new units of market rate housing in that mix as well. Also excited about the work we're doing with modular housing. This also ties into our Sites Readiness Fund as well. The goal there is to create 5,000 new modular homes in Cleveland over the next 10 years, largely focused on 25,000 acres of single vacant lots in Cleveland. Again, putting our assets to work, working with the private sector to do that. And I would also say, and this is something that me and my fellow colleagues across the country as mayors talk about often, for the private sector to have confidence to invest in cities like Cleveland and Atlanta and Nashville and Detroit, we have to get better at making the process to build easier. I said this in a podcast last week. Process can't be an impediment to prosperity. Process can't be an impediment to prosperity. And so I really challenged my team at City Hall to say, how do we execute permit reform faster? How do we streamline the public feedback process faster? You can't have one block club getting in the way of good housing in our community. How do we give our developers greater visibility to track their permits online like they can do in other parts of our economy? And so again, as we work to address our housing crisis locally and nationally, local government has to do a better job of doing these process reform improvements to get housing developed faster and more efficiently.
Some cities have initiated like a command center approach to housing, and it's one of the things that's noted in this task force's work. Have you considered or thought or organized a way to sort of push through governance housing as a priority?
Yeah, well, in two cases, I think we have really been focused on an all-of-government kind of command center approach to this issue. One, on the work that we've been leading on permitting reform. We have my entire management team and my development cluster working on that effort, along with our internal consulting arm, Urban Analytics Innovation, as well as our technology team, with engagement from developers and other private sector partners as well. So we're making sure that every department, from building and housing to community and economic development to IT, that everybody is aligned and singing from the same hymnal. And the other area where this has really worked, and I know we're going to talk more about this, is around homelessness. You know, like many big cities across the country coming out of the pandemic, and after those COVID relief fund dollars expired, we saw an uptick in the number of residents that were living on our streets in tents.
Local folks or people coming from outside?
Primarily local folks, but folks from across Cuyahoga County and Northeast Ohio.
Yep.
We saw an uptick in the number of encampments, not just in downtown, but in neighborhoods as well, across 12 wards across the city. And looking at this issue, we saw countless areas where the city and the county weren't talking, or the city was not talking effectively with our nonprofit ecosystem, or the county was not talking effectively with our nonprofit ecosystem. And so we got everybody in the room and identified all the barriers from the city, county, and our nonprofit and civic partners.
Yep.
And we deployed a housing command center approach around our Home for Every Neighbor initiative.
Home for Every Neighborhood is the name of the initiative.
Yep. And in less than a year, we've, in a compassionate way, we've closed 50 encampments across 12 wards in Cleveland and housed over 154 individuals.
Does that mean new units of homeless housing?
Well, what's unique?
Housing for the homeless?
What's unique about this is we're actually solving a market problem where we're giving them housing in an existing home for a year, 12 months. So we're giving landlords guaranteed revenue for 12 months. We're pairing that resource with a case manager as well. So if they need substance abuse counseling, alcohol abuse counseling, job training, we have a case manager working with them every step of the way.
Kind of a voucher sort of approach?
Absolutely. So housing first.
Yeah.
And Henry, what you would appreciate about this?
And these are standard houses on the market as rentals?
Yes.
Not refurbished for the purpose?
All of the above.
Okay.
All of the above.
Okay.
What you would appreciate about this is historically you would have to prove, hey, I've been homeless for 6 months or 12 months. Then you get a housing voucher to get housed. That doesn't make any sense. If you're homeless, you're homeless. Or other things like, well, I want to live with my pet. Well, we have some shelters that don't allow you to live with your pet. Or if I'm LGBTQ+, some shelters may not allow you to live with your partner if that's the case. Or, like many of my family members, if they came back from state or federal prison, thank God my grandma had an extra living room and a couch, because in some cases, our reentry population is blocked out from housing. So again, this effort is really meeting people where they are to make sure we have a housing first approach on one of our most important issues around homelessness.
Congratulations, that sounds like
Thank
real
you.
progress. Mayor, if I was just to mention some of the key areas of housing along the spectrum, just a few thoughts on your part, just a little bit of a brainstorming session here. Public housing, what would you say is the state of public housing in Cleveland today?
We made a lot of great progress, especially in tearing down some of our legacy historical housing projects. I look at the work that we've done with the Choice Grant and with the Woodhill new housing development. Obviously, a lot more work to do there. This is where HUD has got to play a big role, and there's a lot of questions about HUD for all of us in this room right now with the state of the federal government. But I think CMHA, working with the city and county and state, have done a really solid job to prioritize how do we go from our legacy public housing projects to building more mixed income communities. I want to see more of that aggressively, but that really depends on the future of HUD and whether or not we're going to have a good partner in HUD.
Home ownership.
Yeah.
Do you see a healthy movement to some home ownership in neighborhoods in Cleveland?
I do. You know, one of the things that we're going to begin to test out here in short order is how do we take some of the tax abatement, tax increment financing strategies that we deploy to encourage downtown development and use those same tools in neighborhoods. So as we look at our modular housing pilot that we are launching here later this year, going into early next year, we want to marry and pair our modular housing effort with a neighborhood tax increment financing district. Again, the private sector, the public sector rather, doing what it can to stimulate more private sector investment in neighborhoods that have been forgotten. So I think this will be a really good example of us as leaders inside of City Hall being innovative about how we deploy taxing tools and new financing mechanisms to encourage more place-based neighborhood investment.
Let's do talk about the federal government for a moment. Have you seen yet, imagined yet, what the cuts in federal dollars are going to be? You have somebody working on the stress test that looks at worst case?
Well, as you can imagine, in a job like mine, Mayor, as you know, there's a lot of things that keep me up at night. And one of those things is the future of CDBG. Really, since the inception of CDBG, it's been a predictable source of revenue for Cleveland to fund our really world-renowned community development infrastructure and ecosystem in Cleveland. We have a great collection of CDCs across Cleveland that do great work around small business supports, home repair, home rehab, making sure they're an extension of the work that we do at City Hall from a place-based standpoint. We have our own Department of Community Development, which is largely funded by CDBG dollars from HUD. We've yet to hear from HUD if that program is going to even exist in the future, which would contemplate potentially massive layoffs inside that department.
CDBG, housing vouchers,
Home
funds,
SNAP.
fair housing, SNAP. Yeah, all of these are potential areas of cuts. And the net effect would be what?
Loss of jobs internally at City Hall, a loss of jobs in many of our social service nonprofits who serve working class Clevelanders across this community, and maybe forcing some of our CDCs to close or consolidate.
Now,
So
worst
real
case,
fears.
worst case, some of those things actually do happen on a scale that's presently projected. Where do you turn? I mean, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you think about what am I going to do, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it philanthropy? Is it
It's philanthropy.
Yeah.
It's our banking partners, but even as I talk to foundation leaders, their balance sheets aren't big enough to solve for a lack of funding from the federal government. And one of the things we were just talking about before our chat started, if some of these vouchers go away, it's going to hurt the banking sector a lot, because the banking sector depends on that financing for those projects to pencil, which will have another downstream consequence on our economy. And so in this moment right now, we don't need just mayors and governors and other local electeds talking about this. We need our private sector partners talking to the Trump administration and Congress about what these cuts are going to mean for our housing economy.
But again, if they happen,
Yeah.
what in the world do you do?
We got to reinvent. We have to reinvent. Henry, as you know, I don't have the luxury of not finding a way to get results and deliver.
You got it.
So we got to be innovative. We got to find a way to make it work. And as we see this destruction of the prior business model, the prior way that states and cities work with the federal government,
Intergovernmental system.
yeah, it's being completely disrupted. But in chaos, there's always opportunity. That's why this meeting is so important. And we're going to have to be forced to think differently about the future of public-private partnerships and how we can still deliver and make sure we address our housing crisis if we see a detachment from the federal government on these core issues.
There's a job of mayor change.
Absolutely, it's changed.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that's changed for me over the last 100+ days has been being a translator of how federal government actually impacts the daily lives of people at the local level. And what's striking, though, in all the research, folks recognize and understand that there's obviously a difference between the federal government and cities across the country. But most residents in Cleveland still think we can still deliver the same quality of services without the federal government. So we need to educate folks about, without the right federal partnership and the right federal investment, core basic city services that cities from not just Cleveland but rural towns too rely on will be in jeopardy.
Mayor, let's wind down here by talking about this group, this task force, and they've been discussing over the morning sort of where do we go from here. First of all, your general thoughts on this task force. You're co-chair of it, and why you signed on, what you hoped would come of it, how are we doing?
Yeah.
But I also want you to give us some advice, because we've been debating this morning sort of a big picture question. Is our next step fighting the cuts, and they're so egregious that needs to be our most important strategy? Just hear our voice and push? Or is this a group that is better suited to thinking, what's the world look like with or without the cuts? And we're going to need we've learned that we need some new structures. Is this the group to help think about what those are? If you had, that's not an either or choice, but how do you see it?
Well, one of the reasons why I agreed to do this, outside of Mary Ellen begging me and harassing me, if I didn't do it, we wouldn't be friends anymore. And I like Bruce Katz, by the way. As an urban studies geek at American, I loved reading Bruce Katz as a college kid. I think
He is that old.
yeah. Stop that. One of the big reasons why I joined this task force is I think America needs unity again. And if there's one issue where I think there's broad opportunity to bring the country together again and to show unity in America, is around housing. We have a housing affordability crisis in our country right now. And I think this task force has the ability to solve that and address that. I think secondly, I would charge this task force with being about the work of creating what the New World Order is going to look like, and really forcing that paradigm shift with this upcoming budget and tax bill conversation. We can't assume that the world is going to look like what it did in 2024. And we should go where the puck is going, not where the puck has been. And in this chaos, in this moment of uncertainty, is, I think, great opportunity to show America what true public-private partnership models can look like at the state and local level. And this group is best equipped to engage the private sector and governors and mayors across the country in what that new playbook can look like moving forward. But we got to start now. And we got to focus on a handful of things. We don't need 100 recommendations. We need 5 or 3 or 2 or 1. But, succinct, clear set of priorities to get some real action.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for a young mayor who is creating a comeback city.
Yes.
And who's the right person to chair this task force.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rael, do we have times for any questions from the floor?
Unfortunately,
We don't.
All good.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Hopefully, we answered most of the questions
Yes.
en route to the conversation. I think it's my job to turn it over to Ms. Thomas. Right.
We'll see y'all tonight at the reception.
Thank you, Mayor, and good luck to the Cavaliers.
Yes.
Tomorrow.
I might go suit up. You never know.
Good afternoon. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Susan Thomas, and I am the president of the Community Development Corporation at Fifth Third Bank, and I am one of the co-chairs along with Mayor Bibb. I've been the short task of summarizing that very lively conversation into what might be some key takeaways for us as a group. And so I think I will put out a few things that I think really struck me as important takeaways for us. So one of those was the importance of stabilization of the housing stock, and then beyond that going into new and innovative development. That was a both piece. And I think that's a really important thing maybe as we look at our work. The second thing was the tie-in between housing and economic development. And I think this is a place that we heard a little bit of theme on this maybe earlier today, but a place where maybe we're missing some of that tie-in and the specific ways in which those work together. And then, of course, in today's environment, the focus on public-private partnerships and the importance that those will play both in the changing landscape and relationship between the federal and state and local government, as well as with the need to reinvent so much of what we're doing. And finally, I think that focus on unity, finding that the housing is a place where, independent of sector,
Yeah, that's right. These I catch all the time. I break my ankles.
Come on in.
You getting any playoff games?
Not yet.
All right. Huh?
Just watching on TV.
Okay. Excuse me, please.
Let's see how the second round goes. Okay. I went to the first round the last 2 years and never got that far. Sound like maybe I need to just
You're
wait.
bad luck. Yeah, you're
Maybe I need to wait till they
stay
get to
away.
the Eastern Conference Finals before I go to a game.
That's your working theory.
Yeah, exactly.
Still around? Well, I haven't seen the frog in a minute.
It's still
It's
around.
still around?
It's
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports person, but I tangentially keep up, obviously. I know, I kind of watch headlines. Be generally aware.
go.
Yeah.
Izzy, is Jeff coming in here too? All right.
Thanks for making space.
You got Jeff? You got Jeff Marie?
Jeff was here moments ago.
This is probably numbered or something that I'll forget or miss. So.
Do you want Director Martin also?
Just in case, yeah.
Okay, great.
You can get started though if you guys want. Take a seat, Jeff.
Well, I had a question.
Yeah.
You broke a little bit of news there saying that you're looking at the idea of a TIF for neighborhood development. Could you elaborate on, do you have neighborhoods in mind, and what would that pay for?
We do. Jeff, you want to talk about the preliminary neighborhood TIF idea? That we're
Yeah,
talking
we
about?
are, we're looking at several east side neighborhoods, still not fully ready to be public yet with where, but hoping to introduce some legislation later this year. And I think really the idea is, how do we use this tool to build on other investments that we've seen to really create a workable housing market in the east side of Cleveland?
So do you need tips for like commercial, for residential, for both?
Mr. Mayor, you talked about predatory lending and how so many of these people are not in Cleveland, not in Ohio, not even in the country. As you know, I live in this community. I live in Cleveland. I love this community. And I get more than 5-6 calls a week from people wanting to buy my 2 properties. Your advice to people, if they are in a position to hold on to them or not, as to how they should respond to that. Somebody's got to be selling, otherwise they wouldn't call it. And as you know, the more they sell, the more Clevelanders lose control of Cleveland.
Well, my advice would be to stand firm and stay strong and continue to be a homeowner in our city. And if you have predatory, out-of-state or out-of-country LLC investors harassing you, please call our Building and Housing Department. Reach out to the Department of Consumer Affairs at the county, because we want to hold these folks accountable. And that's why we worked with council to pass the Residents First legislation to give us more tools in the court of law to hold these out-of-state, in many cases out-of-country predatory landlords accountable in the court of law. Prior to the legislation, we didn't have a lot of tools at our disposal to address this. I think the work we've done in Shaker Square with some of these out-of-state investors is a good testament to the power of the Residents First legislation. Now you have to have a local agent in charge if you're an out-of-state LLC investor. That is a big deal because it creates real accountability to hold those folks responsible for keeping up their properties in our city.
You talked about process. Obviously, there's local process, but HUD funding that sticks around has a whole lot of things too. And part of the talk was like, how does the federal government help cities do this? What kind of changes would you be looking for to make it easier to maybe deploy these HUD funds on a variety of things?
And I might have Jeff chime in as well, and maybe the secretary as well too. But in our current conversations that we've had, both at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, as well as I've had with Senator Marino and HUD officials, it is around how do we streamline the regulations that exist for CDBG, Home Fund, and at large, how can HUD be a better partner to allow us to build faster and quicker and more efficiently at the local level?
Secretary Cisneros,
Let me comment on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
last point,
please.
and then I'll be happy to take your question. I would recommend to the current Secretary, Secretary Turner, that if he wants to have HUD funds have the maximum impact in communities, lessen the regulations, reduce the amount of steps that they have to go through, because this is funding that can be used very effectively at the local level if it's used for local purposes. I tried in my tenure at HUD to make it community-centered as opposed to Washington top-down. And if I read the intentions of this administration, they'd like to do that kind of thing. He really needs to focus on the how to do it, because it will make a difference to get money to a local mayor, local community, state, who know best what the problems are in that community and can delegate money to those purposes, allocate money to those local purposes. Your question?
I hope you recall former Secretary of HUD, Marcia Fudge.
Yes.
She had a 30,000 homes by 2030 initiative. How difficult is that going to be to make happen now, given the current national situation?
Well, it's unfortunate that in our country, when one administration replaces another, they generally replace every initiative that was underway in that previous administration. So it's sad. It's not a way for a country to do its work, but unfortunately, that does happen. So there'll be some other iteration, I'm sure, of efforts to generate supply, generate production. I think Secretary Fudge, who was a mayor, by the way, in this area, correctly diagnosed the problem of housing in America as principally about producing supply. We just have too many barriers to the production of supply. And basic supply and demand says if there's not enough housing, prices are going to go up. It's become more unaffordable. Now we have additional complications, like the costs of materials, for example, and the tariffs will only make that worse. So we've got a serious challenge before the country, but fundamentally we have to produce more units if we want to get to more affordability and keep the home ownership, the dream of home ownership alive, and recognize that a home, whether it's rental or a home, is the foundation for most of the social progress we want to make in our society. It's very difficult to think about where children are going to have the quiet place to do their homework if we don't have a home. For people to take their medicines if they're sick, if they don't have a home. To plan for the job that they want if they don't have a home. So we take it for granted, but a place to live is the beginning of all the other social progress we want to make.
And one of the things that makes this modular housing effort so important is that the cost to build is over 30% cheaper with modular than any other traditional home. So it allows us to do it in a cheap, efficient way with the same quality in our neighborhoods as well. So really excited about the modular work that Jeff and his team is leading.
Down modular homes, I hear the term.
Jeff, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so a modular home is a home that is built in a factory. It is not like a trailer park home that you would kind of think of, but it is a home that is built in a climate-controlled area. While that home is under construction, a foundation can be being built on site, and within 3 months, that unit in one or more units is put on a flatbed truck, lifted in place by a crane, and set. And so we've been working quite a bit with Habitat for Humanity locally. High-quality homes that look just like other homes on a block, but are built in half the time. And we believe that we're working to attract a modular manufacturer here by having that local, reducing the cost, the time to deliver. We can deliver homes a lot cheaper in our neighborhoods, and we've got, as the mayor outlined, over 18,000 land bank lots in the city of Cleveland that we're working to make available for new homes.
With all the changes we've seen in our society in all products, whether it's how you communicate or how you drive a vehicle or everything else, how you fly, one of the last areas to change is the production of housing. We just are way, way behind. Cleveland may be setting the pace with this modular idea because it's an idea whose time has come. It can be done more cheaply, saves time, and time is money. So it may be a new day with respect to how we construct housing. And Cleveland, Mayor, your initiative is setting the pace for other cities.
Absolutely.
Mayor Bibb, I know that you're looking at streamlined processes for modular housing,
Yep.
but what you alluded to permitting reform and what you're trying to do to modernize processes at City Hall for people who may have an existing home and they're trying to renovate it, or somebody who's trying to build new. How soon are we going to see things speed up?
Really fast. So by this summer, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll see an electronic portal being launched online for folks to track their permit and upload their drawings online at the City of Cleveland website. Later this summer, it's our goal to acquire a new Salesforce platform that gives us the ability to track all these projects that we do around development across the entire cluster, both internally and externally. Right now, we don't have a central project management tool at City Hall to track all these small-scale and large-scale projects. And then we have on our open portal data dashboard, we have progress tracking everything that we're doing around the transforming our permitting process across the entire city. And so I know Sally and Jeff and the team have been working around the clock to get that done. It's way overdue, but I think by this summer you'll see some near-term changes, and over the next 2 years you'll see wholesale change in terms of permitting at the city of Cleveland. Sally, Jeff, any other updates on permitting for me to talk about?
So a lot of it was technological changes that needed to be made that were long overdue.
Yep.
So we had a lot of what we call technology debt to pay for, meaning we had to upskill and upgrade all of our systems, which is what we've been doing for the past year and a half, really. So publicly facing the end of summer, early fall, you'll see something tangibly different, and then we'll continue to iterate and change that as the continuing years go by and hopefully get a faster and faster process. But it will be a very transparent process, unlike currently.
I would share just two other things on process that we're working on. One is on the housing front, we are really looking to streamline approvals, having pre-approved designs that the city might acquire the construction drawings for. So the builder could just come in and say, I want these, and they're pre-approved. Really being clear about the type of things that complicate review or approval. If you're over 3 units connected, you're triggering a different level of review. We look at it as thinking about your carry-on luggage. If you fit in this box, it can go quickly. And so very clear about defining the box. We also have been doing a lot of work on zoning reform, implementing a new form-based code that makes it easier and dramatically reduces the number of variances that you will need for any particular type of housing. And I think with the modular pilot, we have a real opportunity between that and form-based code to reimagine what a block looks like, to think about accessible dwelling units, to think about units in a block that would be oriented differently for multi-generational living, and our neighborhoods think differently about density, and we're really excited to be able to roll that out in conjunction with all the other changes. We've got to make building easier.
Mayor Bibb, we talked a lot about federal partnerships and possible hindrances to those. I'd like to talk about the announcement of this sale, the federal building for sale downtown, and how you see that affecting downtown.
Federal workers work in that building, and it's been a lifeblood for downtown Cleveland for decades. We'll see what happens once the building gets in the market. If we're able to attract a buyer, I know that my administration will work very closely with that buyer. But my hope and my plea to the federal government would be to work more thoughtfully with state and local elected officials on the disposition of these assets. We're all for efficiency. We're all for thinking differently about our fleet of federal buildings, but do it in conjunction with local elected leaders so we can have a thoughtful plan to respond. And you know, we have tons of great momentum happening in downtown Cleveland. Over $5 billion of planned investment over the next 10 years in the urban core of our city. And so now is not the time to stop investing in downtown. But I'm concerned that this could be a devastating blow to our momentum, and we're keeping a watchful eye on what happens next.
Mr. Mayor, can we bring it back to the community for a second?
Sure.
You're aware, and many of this table are aware, of the legendary Councilwoman